You know what I'm saying? And introduce something that's that's radical. If you don't mean, unless you remember.
So it's radical and innovative.
Radical. It's like a black toothpaste. I'm putting something black on my white teeth to whiten them. Come on now.
The Afropreneur Podcast, a podcast for African entrepreneurs, presents inspiring, innovative, and disruptive entrepreneurs from Africa as they share their lessons, insights, and learnings from their unique entrepreneurial ventures. I'll be your host. My name is Ogweno Stephen. Let's roll.
That was a nice episode talking about our colonization and African culture. And what we got in the last episode is that actually Africans have lost that sense of community. So I want you to give us a walkthrough in terms of how we can go back to that sense of community and build a rich and a robust community that people can actually feel that yes, we are bringing back those values that have really been lost.
Okay, it's one of my favorite subjects, by the way. Now, funny, I reread an article today, and it was about the Japanese and the Japanese culture. And it was about economics. And it also was about Africa specifically. What the article was trying to do, or did, it talked about how we as Africans are looking for economic development, but it cautioned and said that without a cultural basis for that supports our goals, that we would develop in ways that would not benefit us. Example, the Japanese. The Japanese have a term that describes how they see the world in regards to development. And what the term basically means is that it means that they take a position that if they're going to produce something, because see, we have to look at the mundane level of quote unquote building, production, blah, 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 and economics. But we almost have to look at ethics and we have to look at values. But they look at them simultaneously, okay? The article was saying how the Japanese, the Chinese, other Asians, and the Indians all look at it simultaneously, whereas we've been taught to look at it like Europeans in fragments, okay? And now here's what that means. For example, for the Japanese, they're known as people who, as in industries in which they participate, to produce the highest goods, highest quality goods. Okay? Why? The reason is because they have a sense of ownership, a sense of pride, a sense of responsibility, and a sense of value. Like, for one of the values is a value actually for the materials that they're using. Meaning culturally and historically, they're like the Pokat and the Rendili. The Pokat and Rendili, if whenever an animal was killed, they used everything. They used the ears, they used the bones, they used the skin, they used the interior, they used the gut to make vessels for carrying water, whatever. Everything. Okay? Now, that's what the Japanese culture and belief is in regards to production. Meaning that if we use a tree, let's use it wisely. Let's give value. So one, they give value to the environment. Rendili, Pokat, Samburu. So do we. But others, us who have become more westernized, have lost that, because all we see is cut the tree, make the charcoal, collect the money. Okay? So what the article was fascinating because, it brought together it showed how values and a value system could propel a people to be the finest producers of products. See, in our minds, because of the European, we would never think that values are part of what's required to be productive and to be produced on a very high level. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not oriented that way. We're oriented towards competition. See, that's the other thing. Why, and that's why one of the reasons why America has failed, because American education system is all about competition. Okay, whereas in other societies, the educational system is about a more unified benefit versus then just the individual. Okay. In fact, that's how Africa was. Africa was about family, about sharing, giving. And later we'll talk about African sculpture. And one of the primary things you see in African sculpture is expressions of sharing, expressions of giving, expressions of unity. Okay. So I'll give you another example that kind of blew my mind. Traveling, one of my inventions required me to go to a lot of the major industry here in Kenya and meet with the top people. And one of the things that blew my mind was I went to a couple different Indian-owned major textile companies. I went met with the director of Toyota. Okay, and then and then I went to another place. And all of these places had cultural symbols of their community out front in the lobby. Now I was like, and I showed my adopted sons here. I said, do you see how these people are confused about the value of their culture and how they think they got to wear a suit to be significant and important, and how they think they have to look like and act like Europeans to represent
talk like them
and talk like them, and to represent that their company is legit. I said, no. Do you see this Buddha? You go to Toyota main office, corporate office. As soon as you walk in on the left, there's a whole Japanese spiritual presentation. Indian textile manufacturer. They have a whole room. Okay? Now, they ain't shy about their culture. They ain't punked out. They be like, look, and plus they understand the relationship between their culture and their economics. Now, let me give you a couple of practical examples. One of which is called Mortabayeni, or better known in the world as neem. Mortabayeni is is something that is well known here. When I say well known on the level of on the very basic level. There's very little deep knowledge of Mortabayeni here. Mortabayeni is a natural herb. It's a tree. The tree is so profound that 17 years ago, the U.S. government paid and funded an international study to find out what would be the most important botanical for the world and its population in the future. And that means all the botanicals of the world, meaning from South America, Latin America, Africa. They were looking at what would be the most important in terms of science, medicines, agriculture, et cetera, like 7 different areas. Mortabayeni came out to be the most important one. And of course, Isipe was one of the 35 different organizations who were chartered and paid to do the study. Now, in India, Mortabayeni is called neem. In India, It is a $1 billion a year industry.
Mm-hmm.
In Africa, where they have more need than they do in all of India, it's basically zero. Okay? Now, why? People here know it, but we have allowed ourselves to be fooled by the colonial imprint, the white Jesus imprint, that everything African is secondary, substandard, evil, backwards, whatever.
And primitive.
Mm-hmm. Now, the ironic thing about this idea of natural products being primitive is that about 63% or 4% of the people in Europe and America all use some form of nutraceutical natural product.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, they're telling us that it's backwards, it's, whatever, ungodly, it's superstitious, it's crazy. Now, that's how tricked up our minds are.
Mm-hmm.
And see, this relationship between the loss of culture, the economics, when you don't have a clear sense of reality. Now, again, Google it. See how many black, white, indifferent in America and in Europe use natural products. Big time. Okay? In fact, if you really want to learn about them, go to Europe. Go to Scandinavia. Now, but meanwhile, we've been buffaloed into believing that they could be harmful. They could be this. They're food. In the Bible, which is not my main source of knowledge or information, but it clearly states that these, for you, these are like food. Okay? Now, that's just one herb. That's just one. I could mention so many that are in the West that come from here that are an industry, okay, that we're not participating in, recently, for example, a Colgate company who makes, toothpaste or whatever, they came and presented a new toothpaste here in Kenya, a charcoal toothpaste. Now, if I or you had developed a charcoal toothpaste, now charcoal toothpaste is not something new for our culture and our history and our community. All right, use of charcoal, baking soda, other things. All right, using the stick. Okay, that ain't nothing. But when the white man come with it, all of a sudden,
we're going to
it's something that's acceptable. It's something that's new, is bold.
It's like they're validating what we're supposed to be doing.
Now, if you came with charcoal toothpaste, we'd have been laughed at. Okay? Now, again, how do you sell Africans are generally, I would say, conservative and also very much into, being, not being gullible. That is, when I say that, I mean that they're not adventurous in terms of trying new things. They're into doing, this is the way we do it. I paint the house with a brush, I'm going to paint it with a brush next time. Though it takes a week longer than it would if you sprayed the house. So they're into doing things the way they've been doing it. Now, if that's the case, which we know it is, how can white folks come into a country with a charcoal toothpaste? You know what I'm saying? And introduce something that's that's radical. If you don't mean, unless you remember.
So it's radical and innovative.
Radical. It's like a black.
All right. Thanks for listening. And that's a wrap for this episode. For more exciting episodes like this, don't forget to follow our podcast, the Afropreneurs Podcast, on all streaming sites and visit our website at www.ogwenostephen.com. See you on the next one.